Hi, everybody. This is our second series in our virtual Power Summit, DSG Power Summit, and we are here with Mr. Andre Fluellen, my fellow Noel. Andre has a whole portfolio of things, NFL star, Seminole star, husband to the amazing Dr. Kiana Llewellyn, father to amazing girls who are just fabulous in their own way. You're the number one girl dad right now. You're winning. And he is a giant in tech. And so he took an opportunity to learn tech after NFL, or did you start when you were playing the learning process?
I started the learning process while I was playing, but really got, really into it when I got done.
Okay. So a lot of people are scared of tech, right? It scares them. And for me, I'm not a techie, but I try to understand. But I want you to take this opportunity right now is to kind of just help some players who may be interested in tech. Tell us how you got started and kind of give us the understanding of how tech works, essentially.
Yeah, for sure. So, first of all, thank you all for having me on. Seriously, I get excited about stuff like this because this is like right up my alley. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're talking about tech, realistically, as an athlete, you understand, even as a business owner, you understand the fundamentals of technology because at the end of the day, tech is nothing more than business. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Like to its bare basic forms, without a solid business, there really is no tech. And so in the business, let's break that down even more. A business is really nothing more than a team. Okay.
Yeah.
So now that you have this team, environment, all right. So you have, within a tech ecosystem, all right. So what you'll have is, you'll have a tech developer, and then you'll have a business leader, and then you might have a salesperson. And at the same time, so when you see tech or you see a tech-based company, all you're really looking at is you see a team and you see a business, and then
Mm-hmm.
you have somebody who is an expert at that particular tech endeavor. And at the end of the day, that's all it really is. And so that's all it
Okay.
boils down to. So as an athlete, you already know everything. Every athlete already knows everything about team and about business. It's just not really put in a way that makes sense to us. And so,
Okay.
so that's how I try to break it down.
So I guess my question to you, what is tech, right? So we use that term and it's so broad. Like, what does that mean? Like, what falls under that umbrella of tech?
So tech falls under anything that is digital. All right.
Okay.
So there's a physical world where I can go out and touch the trees. And then there's a digital world. All right. Anything
Okay.
that falls under digital is all things tech. So anything that I can interact with on a digital plane, that is all things tech. And so that's, technology is realistically just us interacting, even a Tesla car, right? That's a tech
Okay.
product.
Yeah.
It's us interacting with the vehicle, right? So that is a tech product.
You know what? That makes sense. So to use that, I guess in layman terms, that helps, athletes and just people in general understand the fundamental difference between you going and starting a brick and mortar, opening a brick and mortar space, and then you having the digital space. Because we interact in digital every day, right? We're doing social media, we're doing online banking. Somebody had to create all these things, right, in that digital space. So we talked to Dior, who works at NFLPA, and he was talking about one of his biggest, challenges is helping athletes engage in different spaces, other than trying to be a coach or a referee or a commentator, right? How did you make that jump into tech, and what kind of lured you into that area?
I think that anybody who's starting a new or trying to reinvent themselves, starting a new
Hmm.
endeavor, whatever it may be, when you do something new, and I tell people this all the time, don't do something for the first time. All right. So what I mean by that is, like, just because you're doing something new doesn't mean you have to do something you've never done. And so,
Okay.
when I got into tech and investing and things like that, like those were things that I was interested in while I was playing. So
Hmm.
why not segue a career into that? Because I've already had some interest, some merit in that before. And so what I tell people, like, like me, I wouldn't have got into, I wouldn't have got into the legal field, all right, because
Oh, yeah, of course. That's not
because
you.
that's not, it's not me. And so too many athletes, and I've seen it all the time, people in general, they'll say, okay, I'm gonna go into this new field because I feel like I can make a lot of money in it. But
Yeah.
realistically, they don't have any kind of passion, any kind of desire, never even had any kind of history in that. And so
Hmm.
that's going to be a tough road when you're trying to do something completely new for the first time, instead of doing something that may be new to you, but you've had experience with it in the past.
Yeah. And that makes sense. And that was kind of that carries over from our last conversation in our first series of Power Summit, More Than an Athlete, was how athletes will go and they invest into like restaurants and they hate, they don't even like fast food, right? Or they'll invest in like, random things that have nothing to do because they're in their mind, they're thinking they're going to just make money. I do want to tap into, you're more than an athlete, right? So you've always been more than an athlete. You have an amazing mother, Dr. Fluellen, the first one.
Yeah.
And how, I would say, how did her guidance, because I do want to acknowledge mothers, of course, how did her guidance kind of, move you and push you into being more than just a football player?
So growing up, it's funny. My mom always had me around in places I probably shouldn't have been in. For example, so mom was an anesthesiologist, and I remember I used to be in the operating room with her all the time, fully gowned up and
Yeah,
everything.
you probably shouldn't have been
Probably should have
there.
been there, right? I'm like 6 or 7 years old, and
Mhm.
one of the things I said I would never ever go in again. Like I used to see all the surgeries. One particular surgery that I saw was a facelift, and after I saw it, that was the only one I had to walk out on. Like when I saw what they did for facelifts, I was like, oh no, that's the only one I had to leave on. But so what she did though, she gave me these cool and unique experiences that
Mhm.
most people have never had, and those children have never had. And so that really stuck with me in terms of my more than an athlete is I always want to have and I always want to give people new and unique experiences, things that
Mhm.
they may think that they can never do. That's really my goal. My mother was a business owner. She actually had her own
Mhm.
pain clinic. And so and my father was a business owner. He had a bicycle shop and a toy store in town.
Mhm.
So seeing my parents as business owners, even though they didn't teach me everything about the business, but by default, just by the experience, just by being
Mhm.
around, I'm a business owner now. And so, it's just cool how the lessons, not always taught, but the lessons that are caught are almost better than the ones that were really taught. So I really appreciate
Wow,
her and my
that's deep.
parents. You know what
That's
I mean?
deep. Yeah, shout out to your parents.
Yeah.
They're awesome people. Obviously I know your family from Florida State. So shout out because acknowledging that. I do want to talk about the learning process, right? Because, you're constantly learning. Can you tell me, what is the importance of always being a student?
Being a student, if you ever get to a point where you feel like you don't have to learn anymore, then you've lost. All right.
Hmm.
And I really believe that. And also, really just keeps your mind going on something. Because the one thing the mind is going to do, and I believe this, the mind is going to eat, as I say.
Oh, yeah.
All right. It's going to eat all the time. It never stops feeding. And so,
Hmm.
depending on what you feed your mind, is where the direction of your life will go. And
Hmm.
so if you feed it on education and knowledge and things that you're passionate about, well, your life will go in that direction. But if you just feed it on whatever comes in, whatever comes through your social media feed, whatever comes on the TV, right? Well, then honestly, you're learning the negative. So we're always learning, all
Of
right?
course.
So you can learn how to do things, but you can direct your mind and feed it the things that you want to feed it, or
Hmm.
you can let the world system and negativity feed it, but your mind is going to feed. And that's why I love education, because it feeds your mind in a direction that you want it to go in.
And I love that thought process, right? And I think that's important for a lot of young athletes, to understand that you don't have to stop learning because you're not in college anymore. You can, once you get in the league, take advantage of some of those opportunities. Now, I know that you took advantage of some of their programs. Could you tell me a little bit about some of the programs that you participated in that were sponsored by the NFL or NFLPA?
Yeah, so I did the so I was English and journalism major in college. So I did the
Okay.
journalism boot camp. That was at Bowling Green University, and that one was really good. And then I did the NFL broadcast boot camp, which was excellent to me.
Okay.
Yeah, and because I was on the broadcast boot camp, I actually ended up being on NFL Network a few times. So
Okay. Yeah, I
there's
remember
some
seeing that.
yeah, there's some real opportunities that the league gives to players, and I really encourage all players to take advantage of them.
Well, I do now, here's my question. Do you feel like they should take these, take advantage of it while they're still playing? Or should they wait post career? Like, what is your opinion on that?
I think that once you get started while you're playing, it kind of again it helps direct your mind to see things maybe in a different light, see things beyond
Hmm.
football. Um, the benefit of being an active player is realistically, people give you a lot of chances to mess up. All right.
Okay.
So
Hmm.
once you go, into different places, or if you go around different people, if you take advantage of,
Hmm.
these league resources, even if you miss a day or even if you don't show up for the whole thing, they see that you're trying. All right. And so
Okay.
that makes a big difference for you post career when you need those same resources and people say, oh yeah, I remember you coming there, I'll help you out. And so I would
Hmm.
say, just for the sake of, don't even worry about like trying to make a post career while you're playing. Just get involved in stuff, and by
Hmm.
default people will see you and they'll see you around and they'll say, oh, I saw you trying, there's something about you.
Yeah, and I agree. And so a part of this conversation, obviously we've talked about different things, right? We're gonna circle back to tech, but I wanted, people to really get to know you as a man, as an athlete, what, because I think you took the perspective of, I'm going to be more than this, but I'm also going to reach back and give back as well. And so I want to get that whole dimension, everything. I want to get the complete Andre Llewellyn, right? Because I think people want to see that. They don't want to hear like Elon Musk just talking, right? Nobody wants that, right? So I do want to talk about, when you decided to get into these programs, and some of them may or may not have been connected per se to what you are already doing business wise. Through that process, did you learn different things that you now apply to what you're doing right now? Like when you were in broadcasting and journalism?
Absolutely. So one of the things through the journalism boot camp, and I'll tell you a story. It's a messed up story.
Okay.
I like telling it. So one of the things that I learned the business of the NFL in itself through the journalism boot camp. Now, like, I know you're like, dude, how those aren't even related. The business in the
Hmm.
NFL through the journalism boot camp. All right. So I was playing with the Chicago Bears at the time while I went to the journalism.
Okay.
The boot camp was during one day of workouts, just off-season workouts. All right. Nothing mandatory,
Okay.
off-season workouts. I told the coach a month in advance, I said, hey, coach, there's this journalism boot camp. I was a journalism major. I mean, in college, I said, really would like to go. I will miss one day of workouts. He says, oh, that's fine. Don't worry about it. I said, you sure? He says, yeah, it's fine. So 2 weeks before, go to my position coach. I said, hey, 2 weeks, I got this thing in 2 weeks. He said, yeah. That's the journalism thing. Yeah, you're good. All right. Day before, I told other coaches that, hey, I'm leaving tomorrow. Everything good. Oh, we're fine. I'm there the next day. I get a phone call from a Chicago number. And in my head, I kind of already knew.
Yeah.
Flu, where are you? You missing workouts today? I said, coach, we've talked about this like 8 times. He says, that's today? I'm like, yes, coach, that's today. All right, it hangs up. So the camp was 3 days. I get back 2 days later, get back to my locker. As soon as I walk in the locker room, somebody taps me on the shoulder, says, hey,
Mm.
coach needs to see you upstairs. Oh yeah, make sure you bring your playbook. Uh, that was the day. The day I got back was the day I got cut from the Chicago,
Wow.
and it was because I wasn't there. And they try to make some other excuses, but I know
Hmm.
exactly why I got cut.
Hmm.
So that's when I really learned the business side of the NFL, as in you're an NFL player first. I don't care,
Hmm.
I know that they try to tell you and the teams try to tell you, but at the end of the day, I was representing the Chicago Bears. And if I wasn't there getting better that day, then I wasn't being an accurate representation of that team. And so
Hmm.
therefore there was somebody else who they deemed could do that better. So that's part of the other side in the NFL that a lot of people
Yeah.
don't know about. But I
Hmm.
just like sharing that story because it is a true story.
Well, I want to just hit because I also know that you're a man of faith, obviously. So, I'm a woman of faith. So I would, we go there. And
Right.
it kind of triggered for me, right? So that was a moment of rejection, right? But you did not allow that rejection to define who you are. You didn't say, well, because the Chicago Bears were mad at me because I went to boot camp, that means that now I stop, right? Existing as Andre Fluellen and stop learning and growing, right? So can you give me just like, how do you live your life in that way, right? Because it takes a mature person to get to that point. So how did you get to that point of understanding?
Okay, so if you don't remember anything else I've ever said, especially any athlete, I want you to remember
Mhm.
this. The Chicago Bears that day, they cut number 96, but nobody can never cut Andre Fluellen. All
Won't he
right.
do it?
Like nobody, like, you know what I mean? And so as
Yes.
athletes, a lot of times we feel like the number makes us as individuals. Like I really, for a long time, I thought number 96 made Andre Fluellen. And
Hmm.
I realized, man, Andre Fluellen made number 96.
Mm.
And they can try to do whatever they want to do to number 96, but they can't do anything to Andre Fluellen. The only person who can do something to Andre Fluellen is Andre Fluellen, right?
You're right.
And so that was the mentality. And look, I'll tell you, to get that mindset and mentality, it took a lot of work. I mean, I'm a student of positive thinking and positive self-image psychology. Like when I say I'm a student, it is what I do in the mornings, afternoons, evening. I'm always feeding my mind the things I know that will feed me. And so
Hmm.
because I'm a student of it, like I was able to use those quote unquote setbacks and just realize, you know what, man, they didn't deserve me if that's what it's going to
Yeah.
be, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, so I think that's kind of how I started developing myself, and it was really because of those me being cut. I mean, I got cut 10 times over the course of my NFL career. Like
Hmm.
if I had to go back and change things, I would never, like, oh my God, if somebody could have said you would be a Hall of Famer and you would have made hundreds of millions of dollars in your career, I would seriously deny it because I love Andre Fluellen now. And
Hmm.
if I'd have made all that money, I would have loved number 96.
Yeah. See, I love that, because you are acknowledging the realities of the NFL. Because most people think, oh, I'm going to be like, the Ray Lewis, the Julius Peppers, and play 17 seasons. But that's not the norm. That's not the standard. And just acknowledging that you were cut, but that didn't define you. That's not who you are. So I appreciate that so much. I do want to ask you, Techie, right? Uh, what do how do you, if you say to a player comes to you and says, Andre, I want to be in tech, right? What would be the advice that you give them in navigating through the tech field?
Yeah, I would say so. There's two paths. All right. And so
Hmm.
you either want to be, if somebody says they want to be in tech, I'll say, do you want to be a tech founder or a tech innovator,
Okay.
right? Or do you want to be a tech investor? Because those are really the two paths. All right.
Okay.
And and I would encourage, most athletes to find somebody, if you want to be a tech founder or innovator, will find somebody who is founding and innovating. And really, I would say, if they have a startup or whatever, work with them.
Can
Seriously.
you give
Like,
me an example of that? Just, for
all right,
people who are,
prime, prime example. All right. So there's a company who we've invested in, all right, because I'm a tech investor too. All right. So there's a cool company called Fan Control Football League. All right. So the
okay.
Fan Control Football League is real live Madden, right, with real players. As in, you call the play, they dial up 4 plays, right, on Twitch and or through their app, and you get to pick the play. And whatever play gets the most picks, that's what the offense runs. And this is a real
Okay.
arena football league. All right. So I have a friend of mine who actually got a job with Fan Control Football League because that's his area of interest. Why
Okay.
did he? Was he able to get a job with them? Because he's a former player, right? And so what he did is he aligned himself with a tech platform who is going in the direction that he wants to go, but he's not there yet. He can't innovate Fan Control Football yet, right? So instead of trying to innovate it like off rip, What he did was he just aligned himself with people who are already doing it, and they're always willing to teach him and give him all the tricks because he's an athlete. Like being an athlete is a cheat code if you use it right. And so
Hmm.
so that's what I would say being a aligning yourself. If you want to be a tech innovator, would be like really. I mean, he took a job with him. Take a job with him and work with them for a couple of years until you can do your own thing.
Okay. Um, so just before we go to the investor portion, I want to acknowledge what you said. He took a job with them, right? It wasn't, sometimes players they need to understand that you're not going to be in the same space where you're making what, 70, $80,000 a week, type deal. That may be your yearly salary, but you're still learning, and so that that's finding that value in the position because he wants to learn from them.
Absolutely. Like as a former player, look, if you get a job and it's only for the money, you got the wrong job. Seriously,
Hmm.
like it's not so much how much you're getting from the job in terms of financially, it's how much like education, knowledge, like how much future stuff you're getting from the job. So like if it's
Hmm.
only for the money, I would tell people be very careful with that one.
Yeah. So if you talk about investor, right? So what is the opposite side? What is the other path that you're talking about?
So the investment side of it is, one of the ways, there's a couple ways to, I say, really get involved in tech. And one is the investment side. And so when you invest in tech companies, all right, and so I encourage people who do invest in tech companies. Well, number
Hmm.
one is you have to do your background research on this company. But if you want to be an investor, especially if you're a former player, don't make it so hard. Don't try to do it on your own. Find people who are investing in tech companies and just follow behind them. It's the same exact path as the,
Hmm.
as the innovator side. It's just you
Hmm.
just work with other investors. Like that's what I did for a number of years. I just worked with a guy who's been investing in tech companies, just follow behind them. And so what it does is it helps you understand what to look for, what to not look for, how to, everybody's pitch looks good. So how to poke holes in people's pitches and things like that. So as an investor side, you are investing your capital, or what I love even better, as an athlete, you don't have to always invest your capital. You can invest your influence. That's what I like. I like saying write influence checks to get equity instead of writing, dollar checks to get equity. So if you can align yourselves with certain companies that you see or certain people who are investing, a lot of times, like I've gotten a lot of advisor shares just from being on the team or being alongside or even being in the
Well, let's
room.
talk about advisor shares, right? Let's expand on that. What does that mean for people who are not in, who don't necessarily understand? Let's talk about the value of your influence, right?
Yeah. So, all right. So there's a, I'm gonna use a funny term. So an angel investor is somebody who writes a check to a company before they have everything in place. But they say, I believe in the founder, I believe in the vision, I'll write you a check to help you get going. All right.
Hmm.
Then there's what's called a broke angel. Okay. And a broke angel is what I currently have, or I have none. A broke angel is somebody that says, hey, I don't really have the money for that right now, but I have the influence and I have the network. And so
Okay.
I can help your company grow by me being around, not so much more by my checks being around. And so the broke angels get equity shares just like the angels get equity shares, but we do it based upon our influence. And so I like to use that term because you can kind of understand it. I'm not a
Hmm.
broke angel, but you get it. And so
No, yeah.
you can get advisory shares, athletes, you can get some by being in the room and by opening up your network and by using your influence. Oh, it's a wonderful thing. It's right. Again, being an athlete is a cheat code because a lot of investors have worked their entire lives to be able to do what you can do with just your influence. It's amazing once you grasp the concept of it.
So you were talking about, the broke angel, right? And so a lot of players don't necessarily like they're scared. They're scared. They say, well, I don't want to write this $20,000 check, or I don't want to write this $50,000 check because how do I know if I'm going to get my money back? But you're saying there's a way to use your influence and you can do it that way versus writing the check.
Look, I say it all the time, influence over income. I
Mhm.
preach it to the rooftops. Influence over income. If you're scared, you should be scared to write a $20,000, $50,000 check. Like you really should be, especially to a company that you really don't know. But if you can use your influence, if you can just say, look, I got, X amount of followers, or I got X amount of access to athletes, like that's actually more valuable to a startup company than money.
Hmm.
Right? Like
Oh
it
yeah.
really is. So once you get that, if you can get, if you can wrap your mind around that concept, I know it seems crazy, but like, oh man, money's king. Now cash ain't king. Right? I mean,
Hmm.
a lot of times it is, but most times it isn't. Uh, there's a quote by A.G. Gaston, who was one of the most wealthy Black entrepreneurs in history. He made $100 million back in the 60s and 70s back in Alabama. Yeah, like he was making money when it was dangerous for Black folks to make money. Okay, like
Yeah.
A.G. Gaston. And A.G. Gaston said something. He said, "It's just as important for people to think you have money than for you to have money." He said it's just
Wow.
as important. He said sometimes I'd rather people think I have it than me having it. And so what happens is you can get a lot of access because one, even if you have it, if you don't have it, don't worry about it. People think you have it, and they think you have it, then they think you have access. All right. And so that's
Hmm.
how you can use all the things that you've done as an athlete,
Hmm.
being in the NFL, NBA, WNBA, whatever. I mean, we have WNBA players doing the same thing, right? So there's so many opportunities and options if you can learn how to wrap your mind around influence checks over income checks.
I'm gonna use that now. That's gonna be my quote, and
Take
I'm
it.
going to cite you because the lawyer in me. I'll make sure I give you that acknowledgement. I want to just hit on like your family, right? How has your family, your wife, your children, played a part in your goal and how you push forward and being, whether you're in tech or any business that you're investing in, how has your family pushed you forward
you
or
know,
motivated you?
yeah, so I would say there is a definite motivation. Any man, I think, or a husband, for example, like, to be quite honest and be quite candid, uh, men often, especially husbands, are very, very worried about if they're doing a good job. Right?
Mhm.
Like seriously, well, we often think about, man, am I failing? Am I making enough? If I'm doing right, am I doing right by my wife and kids? Am I doing right by myself? Like, what am I doing right? And so, but what that does, if you can not let it drag you down and you can use that as fuel, it is the most, like, some of the most powerful fuel that you can have. All right. And
Mhm.
so a lot of guys who I've seen have seen like the pressures of family life and the pressures of wanting to perform pull them down.
Mm.
I would say, please flip that and let that be fuel for you to be your greatest self, because it's excellent fuel if you can harness it correctly. And so I deal with that just like any other guy. I deal with the fear of failure. I deal with the fear of, if I'm making my family, wife, I'm making the right financial decisions, business decisions. I
Mhm.
deal with that too. But what I try to do at the end of the day, even when it pokes a hole in your heart, you say, you know what? I'm gonna use this as fuel, because when I'm at my greatest self, then my family will be at their greatest. And so that's kind of how I've used all of that to try to be successful as possible in business.
And you know what? I appreciate that. And I appreciate your time. We always can learn from each other. And I think the gems that you've dropped, on this series will help a lot of people. It'll help athletes and it'll help other, sports professionals to learn that athletes aren't just checks, right? And that's one of the biggest things that I always struggle with is I could never see you guys as just checks. You're people, you're human beings that your moms and your dads are trusting, when you're younger in college with, different colleges and in the league. So I appreciate that so much. I appreciate your time explaining tech. I get it. I feel like I learned, you drop knowledge on me. And I appreciate that so much. And, I wish you nothing but the best, Andre, in your continued endeavors. And I like your energy and your vibe. And please give Kiana all the love and kisses from me, because I adore her and the girls. So
Absolutely. Right beside
I'm,
you.
of course, she always right beside you. That's what great women do.